Greetings, folks. This is Ron Wise Gamgee, and welcome to the D20 System Development Vlog. In this video, I want to talk about the mechanics for attacking and defending, as well as how weapons and armor work in D20. So, when a combatant attacks their target, they're the ones that initiate the action test, while their targets resist by rolling penalty dice, which subtracts from the attacker's action test for a net action test total, or net attack total. Both terms are interchangeable in this context. The attribute and class dice that the attacker adds to the D20 action test die depends on their method of attack and the weapon they're wielding. Attacking with a melee weapon usually uses the strength attribute die, but if it's a light balanced weapon like a dagger or a rapier, the attacker can use the dexterity attribute die. If the attacker is attacking using a spell, in that case they can use their intelligence die or their senses die or their charisma die, depending on the magic type that they're using. If the attacker has a class with a preference for their weapon type, like if they're attacking with a sword and they have a D8 in Folk at Arms, they can add that class die to the action test. If the attacker only has a class that has some passing familiarity with the weapon they're attacking with, then they would use the class's half die. For example, the half die of a D8 of a class with a D8 would be a D4, or of a D6 class it would be a D3, etc. If the attacker has a D0 in the class or classes that favor that weapon, and a D0 in any class or classes which have passing familiarity, they only use their attribute die. The target of the attack would roll their attribute die and their class die or feature die as penalty dice for the attacker's action test. This means they don't roll a D20, they just roll attribute and class die. Now, the attribute and class dice that they use depends on the way that they describe their defense. If they're dodge rolling to evade the attack, the target would resist with their dexterity die and the class die of a class that has a preference for dodge rolling, such as the Shaolin monk. If they're blocking an attack with a shield, the target would resist with their strength die and the class die of a class that has a preference for shield blocking, such as the Folk at Arms. If the target is erecting like a magical force field, then they would roll with intelligence and a class die that prefers using magical force fields, such as like some kind of spellcasting class. I really wouldn't say that the glass cannon would use their entire class die, because the name of the class, glass cannon, implies that they're there to just deal massive amounts of damage but that they're brittle. So at best, perhaps they would use their half die. Like with weapon use, the concept of half dice also applies here as well. While classes may have preferred methods of defending themselves, classes may also have methods that they have passing familiarity with. And like with weapon use, if a target has no class that prefers or has passing familiarity with their method of defense, they only use their attribute die to resist. As far as other circumstances that impact the attack tests are concerned, circumstances that favor the attacker would provide bonus dice to their action test, while circumstances that disfavor the attacker, or that would favor the target, would provide the target additional penalty dice to resist with. So the attacker performs their attack test and generates an action test total. The target rolls their penalty dice and subtracts their total from the attacker's action test total to generate a net action test total. the attacker deals damage equal to their net attack total minus 10. So if the attacker's net attack total is 15, they deal 5 points of damage to the target. I've already covered how damage is applied in the injury mechanics video. In my grit better than hit points video, I covered how grit can be spent to buy off the damage that a target receives if the target has grit. But there's another way that the target can buy off damage instead of spending grit, or alongside spending grit, by sacrificing armor or shield durability. Armor and shields have a pool of durability points, with heavier types having more durability than their lighter counterparts. As a rule of thumb, light armor and shields have 10 durability, medium armor and medium shields have 20 durability, and heavy armor and large shields have 30 durability. The durability pool functions similar to the grit pool, insofar as you can voluntarily spend points to buy off damage taken from these pools. Unlike grit, the durability pool cannot be used to improve action test rolls or to activate gimmicks, though that would make for a pretty interesting idea to implement, depending on the gimmick in question. But I digress. Once the durability pool of an armor or shield reaches 0, it's destroyed. So if a character wants to restore spent durability, they have to get their armor or shield repaired, or they can do it themselves, given that they have a die rating in the Armorsmith class or something similar, and the requisite tools and workshop. Now, what about weapon damage, you might be asking? Does a sword deal more damage than a dagger? In D20, the main determinant of weapon damage is the character's class die. The higher the class die, the more dangerous that character is with weapons that that class prefers to use, or is proficient in, to use D&D 5e terminology. This also incentivizes players to pick a weapon that better matches their character concept, rather than simply picking a weapon that has the best damage dice. You might be asking, if that's the case, then how do weapons differ from each other in D20? To this, I say, take into consideration the physical elements of weaponry. Some weapons are longer than others. Some weapons are heavier than others. Some weapons are more balanced than others. Some weapons cut, some weapons puncture, and some cause blunt force trauma. Heck, some weapons can do more of those things all at once. And some weapons are just not as lethal as others, mainly, armed versus unarmed. Many of these factors come into play when using the tactical turn order style of initiative that I spoke of in my initiative systems video, not only for weapons, but for armor as well. If you like or dislike anything you've seen in this video, please give it a like or a dislike and leave a comment. Subscribe if you want to support my channel, and if you really want to support my endeavors, head over to my Patreon and become an appreciated trooper. The link is in the description. Until then, folks, take care and play to find out what happens.